So Transformers issue 27 is here, and well, let's just jump into the recap right away, and you'll know my thoughts as we go. Opening on Bumblebee's lifeless husk is grim, but for me, it brings us back to what started the series: death. Death is real in this universe, and our characters get a chance to explain how it works finally. Short of one spark being totally annihilated, Cybertronians are capable of being brought back online even after millions of years has passed, as we are made known by Trailbreaker when he's speaking with Brawn. Jetfire also shows up, giving us this idea that the bots can be restored, but characters like Bumblebee and Ratchet seem almost too far gone to be brought back by Teletran 1, and possibly even the Well of Allsparks. So, we'll see what happens. I mean, come on. It's comics after all. I'm sure they'll be brought back in another year or so. Bulkhead is also here. He's kind of the young, brash character who says things that just really shouldn't be said. And I think Kirkman excels at writing this character because, personally, I already find Kirkman's writing to be a little childish. So when Bulkhead speaks and everybody just kind of stares at him, I totally get it. Somebody like this started talking to me in these solemn moments, I too would just stare at them in awkward silence. Carly and Spike are getting more page time, which of course I'm happy with. But again, I just, the dialogue here I'm really struggling with because I feel like there's a lot of information that's just being front-loaded to us as the two of them discuss having dinner. It's not an idea that I dislike, but I just feel like people don't talk this way. Thankfully, a lot of the awkwardness is quickly shifted away when Magnus and Flag finally have their confrontation. And I gotta say, it's fine. You know, it's just fine. I really thought that Magnus would have more choice words with Flag, but Flag kind of weasels his way out of it. And this is a question that continues to come up, that Flag has this certain swagger and just over-exuding ego to him in this comic, which he didn't have before, which really leads me to theorize that this might not actually be Flag. This might be another character in disguise as Flag, namely the ever-elusive villainous Zarbon, which, if you don't know who that is, it's okay. My buddy Swizz Prime over on his channel, he's going to have a great video explaining the lore of Zarbon, not just in this Energon universe, but also in the entirety of Transformers. The Combaticons get a little more page time as well as Skywarp returns to join their ranks, and I don't really have an issue with any of this here. It's showing us that the Decepticons are actually on the back foot now. The Energon that they are gathering is diluted, and Skywarp says, hey, I've got news for Megatron, but, you know, he's still got time to kill some innocent humans, and that's going to lead us directly into the real meat and heart of this issue. That's really actually only 2 pages, but I do think that what is done here is done very well, and that is Thundercracker and Optimus Prime's conversation in the forest. Look, the dialogue here is wordy. This is something that I've said multiple times in this video and in others, and a lot of people will tell me, Delta, you just don't understand how Robert Kirkman writes. And I'm going to get to that in the next segment of this story. But for now, I actually want to say that I really do enjoy the conversation between Optimus and Thundercracker. I really enjoy the artwork. I really enjoy that they're bringing back in the deer. Even just in a brief moment, I'm glad they're not hanging on it too long to show us that Thundercracker really does believe in the Decepticon cause, but he just doesn't believe in the senseless violence of murdering innocents. I love the fact that he asks Optimus, you know, is it wrong that if he had to choose between every living thing on Earth and his brother Skywarp, that he would choose Skywarp over and over again? It doesn't mean he wants humanity to die, but he wants to save what's most important to him. I really like this conversation. I think it's done very, very well, and I think Optimus speaks to Thundercracker with a level of humility and tenderness that I feel like I've been missing from his character as of late. So these 2 pages, to me, are really, really good. Now we're getting into Miles Mayhem and General Flag, and this is where I need to talk about Robert Kirkman's writing. Look, oh my goodness, I did not expect Miles Mayhem to be quote-unquote figured out so soon here. I mean, look, of course, Mayhem is a bad guy, of course. And the fact that Flag just shows up and he's like, hey, you're a traitor, you're a bad guy, you're arrested, boom, I'm going to lay out this old man. It's just like, oh, okay. And again, to the people who say, Delta, you don't understand Robert Kirkman's writing. It's varied and it's nuanced and you're just not experienced enough. I'm gonna lean in here. Please explain to me this line where he says, I'm merely checking the tech against the only thing we've discovered that comes close to how advanced it is. I'm on my own path. What does that even mean? What does that mean? What? Who talks like this? I'm not against Flag and Mayhem being in this comic. I'm fine with it. I'm actually really happy that Mayhem is here. I mean, after all, he is, a drip god. Look at how he's dressed. It's just, we're already here, and it's just really confusing to me why this is written the way it is and why we're doing this. Just leave Mayhem out for a while. I don't know. Look, we're going back to the arc. We're getting a lot more of Wheeljack and Optimus, and I really like that because I feel like Wheeljack continues to be not a thorn in Optimus' side, but a little bit of an issue because Optimus is obviously going one direction with the faction, and Wheeljack is a little more close-minded. Obviously, Optimus is being extremely generous to their enemies, and Wheeljack doesn't really like that. Seeing more Decepticon corpses, such as Blitzwing, Dirge, and Slipstream, is really nice. And I'm just going to say this, I'm really happy that Slipstream is drawn like a regular Seeker. I'm not saying that female Transformers cannot be drawn more slender. It's just, I'm happy that they can just be drawn as robots sometimes. That's all it is. It is interesting that we get more close-up of Slipstream as Thundercracker says, hey, I don't think it's a good idea that you should revive these Decepticons. It's just going to cause more issues. Optimus' response to this, I understand what he's trying to say, but again, the way it's written, he says, you are right, Thundercracker. It is a flaw of mine to protect kindness on those who have none. I just feel like it's very wordy, very, very strange way to say it. Moving on, Ultra Magnus is doing some training with Sideswipe and Blaster, and I, for one, I'm happy to see these characters on the page. It does worry me. It worries me a lot that we have too many characters here. Daniel Warren Johnson had a lot of characters in his story, but they were background side characters like Jazz and even Trailbreaker. I know a lot of people at the time really disliked that because their favorite characters weren't getting main story time, but it was because there was a centralized story that needed to be told. Ultra Magnus is relinquishing the title of Magnus to RC. I don't dislike this idea. Similar to how we were introduced to the idea that being a Trion is kind of a name of wisdom or a title of wisdom, I think that Magnus being used in a similar way is really cool. However, let me be clear here. I really hope we are not going the IDW route, where Ultra Magnus is just some regular guy who's in a suit of armor. Let Ultra Magnus be his own character. I'm fine with Magnus being a title. I'm interested what he's going to be called now moving on. What is RC going to be called moving on when she picks up the mantle? But I have to say, it's got me a little worried. Another thing that's not really quite sitting right with me is the fact that Thundercracker is now fully an Autobot. Look, I've talked about this many times. I'm not saying that Thundercracker cannot change. I'm not saying that he cannot work with the Autobots, but this does not really feel earned in my mind. He's been through a lot, but for him to fully throw away his belief in the Decepticon cause, is just like, oh, okay, all right, he is an Autobot now. It's not the end of the world, but it's definitely just a moment. I know a lot of people are excited because they want him to, hey, be a new arm for Superion or do this or do that. But for me, this just does not feel earned. I would have preferred if he stayed a Decepticon but worked with the Autobots and kind of stayed in this gray zone. I mean, as we had just heard from Optimus, there are Autobots who don't like the Earth, and there are Decepticons who do like the Earth. And so continuing to allow that gray space to exist, that gradient between Autobot and Decepticon is really important. But now he's got the Autobot logo. Okay, not what I personally wanted. I don't think it's the end of the world, but I definitely think it could have been handled better. Speaking of being handled better, Bulkhead. I don't have an issue with him. Again, he's obviously meant to be this young, brash kind of character, but it is interesting to see him interact with Wheeljack, as Wheeljack is getting kind of snappy and a little grumpy at everything going on. And I do actually like that. I like to see that Wheeljack is having some friction with where the Autobot cause is going. Speaking of which, where it's going, Optimus is fully restored now, and now he's doing his speech of, we have to rid the planet of all the Decepticons once and for all. So thanks, buddy. I'm glad you're on the same page now. Okay, the final of this issue is something that I'm sure a lot of people will anticipate me having an issue with, but actually I don't. I really like the last 2 pages here. We're seeing Cliffjumper run through Cybertron as he's trying to hide from Decepticons, and looks like he's just gathering parts for survival. And that's when we get the reveal that Shockwave is still alive, and he's coming for revenge. I'm actually super okay with this, and I actually really like this. A lot of people are going to come out of the woodworks and complain, and I think there's 2 sides to the complaints. The first complaint is going to be, I'm so glad that Shockwave is back. Daniel Warren Johnson should have never killed him. That was a bad decision. Incorrect. Daniel Warren Johnson killing off Shockwave was a very good decision because it got to show us the brutality of Optimus Prime, as well as Megatron's arm fully corrupting him, and it gave us a sense of weight to what was going on. Secondly, on the other side, people are going to say, Shockwave is back, what the heck? So his death means nothing. Everything that happened in issue 12 and before that is meaningless. And I actually disagree with that. I know. I'm fence riding here. I'm just making everybody angry. I don't think bringing a character back from the dead immediately means that their death or everything they've done in the past is meaningless. I think it can be done if it's handled correctly, if there's enough time that has passed, if it makes sense within the story. I think this makes sense within the story. I think having Shockwave be this overarching villain on Cybertron makes sense. I like this. I don't think it cheapens his death. I don't think it cheapens anything that happened in issue 12 or anything before that. It's just, he survived, and he's here to haunt the Autobots some more. And I really enjoy that. Okay, I've rambled through this issue. It's super early in the morning. I had a script for this, but I kind of threw it out because, honestly, when I first read this issue, I really, really enjoyed it. And then I read it again and again because I know I'm always super hyped when I first read the issue and think that nothing's wrong. But overall, I still do think that this is a big improvement over issues 25 and 26. However, there's a lot of things here that rub me the wrong way. The dialogue is still super wordy and just doesn't make sense at times. Thundercracker just becoming an Autobot with the logo is really not something that I wanted. I'm really worried about all the characters being added into this. I'm really worried about what they're doing with Ultra Magnus. I actually really like that Shockwave is back. That's a really good thing. The conversation between Optimus and Thundercracker, while not meaningful in a way that's going to last with me the way a Daniel Warren Johnson dialogue would stick with me, I still think for the most part it was done relatively well. My buddy Carl's Collection has said this many times on the Teletran Tapes podcast and to me personally, and I think that it's a really good way to put this, and that is this comic is now a comic for the masses. It checks all the needed boxes, doesn't seem to be taking too many risks. I'm not saying that that's a bad thing necessarily. It's just coming from the heights that we had, a very singular, focused, specific vision for this story, and now getting something that's a little bit larger, a little more convoluted, a little more messy, especially in the dialogue. It's just different. So, of course, I'm going to continue to read, but I'm also always going to continue to give you guys my honest thoughts and feedback. And I know a lot of people like to read these issues and simply give it a review of, oh, it's mid, or, oh, it's peak. And I just don't think that that's very helpful. I think we need to have the discussions and talk back and forth about what we like and what we don't like. And, of course, I know there's going to be somebody in the comments saying, well, Delta, you obviously don't like Kirkman's writing because you obviously haven't read Invincible or Walking Dead. Guys, I know how Kirkman writes. I'm very well aware of his writing style, and that is why I do not like it. It's not because I don't understand. It's because I want the comic to be good on a month-to-month basis, not good in 5-10 years. Okay, rant over. See you later.